Good evening, good evening, good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode 998. Wow. Monday, March 3rd, 2025. We are 2 weeks away from episode number 1000. We're going to be all together in the same room at the same time. That's downright disturbing. We're going to be in Huntsville, Alabama for show number 1000. But anyway, this is the pre show. This is the magical, marvelous part of the program where we typically do three things. We share boring personal stories, and I'm really good at that, humorous anecdotes, and I'm not good at that. And occasionally we say outrageous things, and I can be good at that. So if you're looking for the actual show content, move the slider over about 8 minutes. And we will get the show started at the top of the hour. All right. Got the gang all here. Pete, can you hear us okay? Hey, Bill, talk to me. I might have an audio issue here.
Man, can you hear me okay, James Spann?
I hear you good. I did not hear Pete.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you
Okay. I
sound you
hear
sound loud
I
and
hear
clear on
James
my
A.
side.
All right. I think I'm good. Pete, say something. Talk to us.
I think Pete can't hear us.
Oh, okay.
He's definitely happier then.
Yeah, but say
It's
that's
the
good
best
for
way to
him.
listen
That
to
will
this show.
keep his IQ raised to a higher level if that's the case. That's good. Um, so
He needs his ears on.
um, Pete, we would help you, but I don't know. Don't know.
We don't know how.
I'm looking at the radars out there. James A looks quiet. What happened? Thought we had tornadoes flying tonight.
Late tonight.
Late. Okay. Timing.
Yeah, it'll be
Overnight. That's always good.
a picture of the week.
Strong winds coming across the Panhandle.
We were up
Yeah, I
in
saw a lot of
Martinsville shooting what's that?
I saw a lot of
Oh,
blowing dust in
am I losing
New
Wi-Fi?
Mexico
Roswell.
and the Panhandle. Um,
You were saying, James A?
Oh, it said my internet connection is unstable. Goodness, I need to get a cable and just
I
plug
thought you
into
were
this.
becoming a mime there for a minute. You were really still. That was pretty impressive.
Doggone it.
I finally built my own network here at our place, which solved a lot of our problems. We have our own little bandwidth and we have our own little Wi-Fi network, and just for the weather people, and it's really nice.
You get a separate backbone and all that, or did you just go out like Brian Peters and
Yes,
steal
we
some
act.
internet off the pipe?
Yeah, well, there's a Homewood Suites by Hilton next door. We're stealing their bandwidth and we're using that. So I've been long well versed in that. Um, no, in this, the station's got like a fiber optics thing, a big pipe, but this is actually Spectrum, Charter, whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
It's about 200 megs up and down, which is perfect for what we need it for, and it has saved our bacon many times when the big network goes down.
You can get you some big
We actually,
batteries and put them in there too after your recent
yeah, yeah,
experience.
yeah. We actually had a ransomware attack on the company wide, and
Oh Lord.
this was several years ago. But I mean, and they did not pay the ransom, and it was a long process to rebuild everything. And our little weather network just kept on a trucking. We were unaffected, so that was
It
good.
was it's interesting looking at what goes into like a cyber insurance policy anymore because it's a textbook in how to protect yourself.
Well, what I
Not
don't
that
understand,
you
that
can, but at least you get some protection.
I probably shouldn't say that on here, but this is what we do. We say outrageous things here on the pre-show. So they went right back to Microsoft, that same crap that got them in trouble. It's just like they cannot get away from. I don't understand why they cannot get away from Microsoft. That's what. That's the reason they lost all that money and all the data, and they just went right back to it. And I'll leave it at that, and will not nag anymore. Um,
Well, you nagged me for years, so I got a Mac and I love it.
Well, and again, I look, I don't, I just need something that works when I turn it on. I don't need some security risk where I've got to download 87 antivirus things and you're just constantly fighting that stuff. I don't have time for that. Nobody got time for that. So
Ain't nobody got
I just
time for
need
that.
some, I just need something that works when you turn it on.
Well, I bought a nice new 13-inch Air iPad today for one of my people, and oh my goodness, that is a good feeling little machine. I
Yeah, they
have
put
this.
They are
the
pretty.
Apple has their own silicon in there, the silicon, and it's
Yeah, that's an
really,
M2.
really.
I've got this. I think it's an M3 Pro, and it's heavy because it's got
I
I
my
think two
my
terabytes,
iPad is an
1 terabyte or something.
M1. This is the first generation with Apple Silicon in it. It's an M1, but it's screaming fast. I mean, I don't for what I do, it's perfect.
Yeah,
And this
I'll do the
MacBook,
video like for you on Saturday nights now, and on my old Mac it would take like 20 minutes to render, and now it takes like 20 seconds. By the time I turn around on my MacBook Pro on that M3, it's already rendered.
yeah, I looked at mine says this is an Apple M2 Pro. This computer I'm using here,
Yeah, this is an M2 Air right here. Oh, and
2023.
this is
But
I
it's
don't know.
it's
No, I don't know what this is. I better look before I say that. What I bought today was an M2 Air.
and welcome to Apple Brains, our
That's right.
program tonight. Thanks
That's
for
that's a good
watching
sounding show right there. Apple Brains. I like that.
Apple Brains.
We got to get Pete here.
Um,
What's going on with Pete?
well, he ran. He's had enough of this and he's out. He's
Yeah,
done.
he must be a Microsoft guy. All right, let's go
Linux.
Yeah,
here.
he's.
Back over here. Let's see. General and about.
Yes, Pete says he cannot hear anyone.
Uh-oh, that's not good.
We're seeing him in the chat here, so
This could be a major rant session
um,
tonight.
I'm not going to say it. I will not. We're done talking about Microsoft. So Neil cannot come on the show tonight. I kind of had a funny feeling we probably wouldn't have Neil. When is his confirmation hearing? Do we know?
I don't know.
I just, the main thing, we're just optimistic that Neil is going to wear his WeatherBrains hoodie at the confirmation hearing in front of Congress. And we'll have, weatherbrains.com stamped on the back there. So
Show
there you
title.
go. So, yeah.
I'll say, what is that on the back of your shirt there? Show title.
Mr.
What is that?
Dr. Jacobs, what does the show title thing mean? We don't understand this.
That's right.
I think he ought to share some of his stories at the confirmation hearing.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, talk about a few Copperhead stories.
All
All right,
right. So I wish I could help Pete. I don't know what to do here. And welcome to our television viewers. It is Monday night. We have no weather issues. For those watching on the television side, we'll probably have some tomorrow night, but not tonight. So all is well. It's our Monday night weather party. And let's get the recorders going here. We're missing our guest. He's with us, but we're having a little technical difficulty here. So
he's using Google Hangouts.
yes, right. That's an old step back right there. All right, track 1 and track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
That's what Bill Curtis says. Hey, WeatherBrains, episode 998. Wow, 998. We're 2 weeks away from show 1000. This is for Monday, March the 3rd, 2025. We are now officially into meteorological spring. And man, I don't know about you guys. When I was in school, it just seemed like that stretch from January to the end of the school year just started to accelerate. That this time of the year flies by, and it's doing it this year. So,
Yep.
welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's go out to Dr. James Adelite in Tulsa, who is watching the weather. What's the situation out there tonight, James?
All is quiet on the Western Front for now, but we get up to late evening and toward midnight, we'll see some thunderstorms fire up, probably west of Oklahoma City. It'll be Rick's watch, at least for a while tonight, but it does look very QLCS spinny, especially in south central Oklahoma. So I'm hoping that skirts me by, but I've got my 3 a.m. alarm set. So yay team.
Yeah, we don't sleep much in the weather business, especially this time of the year. And our Norman correspondents are out apparently weather watching tonight, Kim and Rick. But let's go down south. Troy, what's this thing going to do to you?
It's going to probably most of the best dynamics are probably going to pass up James's way in North Texas, and then just go damn near crazy, probably in Northeast Texas and back into the Arklatex and that area and on eastward for tomorrow. With that, I assume, guys, that still was an enhanced risk from SPC as of this afternoon. I didn't look at the latest outlook, but I don't know if that thing won't be upgraded tomorrow, but I don't know.
Yeah, it will sweep on to the east, and it looks like the better potential for tornado stuff tomorrow is going to be maybe southwestern Mississippi. Down into parts of Louisiana. Here, there's just we have no cape. I mean, zero, no cape, no instability tomorrow night. It's going to be a big old bag of wind.
Yeah, you ask about it. While we're probably going to miss most of it, we have some showers first thing in the morning. As the best descent kind of passes overhead tomorrow morning, and that initial front or dry line or whatever it is moves through the area. Our big news here tomorrow, and I actually been on the phone to our airport in Austin, especially this afternoon, FAA folks and everybody else, has been this west wind in Austin tomorrow with sustained winds up to 40 to 45. And you sit there and go, and Kim goes, that happens all the time, along with the watermelon-sized hailstones that fall at her house. But the thing about it, Austin, James, as you know, up in Tulsa, Austin is 2 runways, 1.8 and 3.6. And so this will be pretty much a 270 wind, which is completely crosswind, 40 to 45. And spent time talking to some folks this afternoon. They're very nervous about here tomorrow as far as traffic and be able to maintain. Our airport's already overextended. And James, I don't know if any of you saw it. I know James in Tulsa has seen this, but Dallas, Fort Worth, North Texas overnight, a lot of pilot reports of anywhere between moderate to severe and even some extreme turbulence. And we had a United commuter jet last night from Springfield to Dallas, I'm thinking, was coming into Dallas, and maybe it wasn't United, it wouldn't have been, but it was a United jet. Came in and severe turbulence about 2,000 feet off the ground. Think about that. You're getting close to what'll kill you. And what kills people in aviation largely is the ground. And when you start seeing that, and they had 8 injuries, that plane went back into the air, went down to Waco, put it on the ground. Ambulance took 8 people to the hospital from that airplane last night. So this is a very dynamic situation over the southern plains, even if you don't get, James, that severe weather that you may see kind of on to the south of you, especially.
Yeah, it's a big old bag of wind. So let's go to Kim in Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Kim, what's going to happen out there tonight?
Well, if climatology is any kind of guide, then I should be enjoying my EF0, EF1, or maybe EF2 tornado sometime around 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning.
Don't say that, Kim.
Ooh.
Don't say that,
Ooh.
please.
Ooh.
Within 1 to 2 miles of my house. That's
and what's sad is I didn't even, Kim, I didn't even mention it here, but the biggest danger here tomorrow, have y'all looked at the SPC fire stuff? We're in critical fire danger for tomorrow. This place may not be here tomorrow night. I shouldn't say that.
Don't say that, Troy. Don't.
But again, it's just all this is just really interesting. And Kim's correct. Not one thing is the other.
here comes spring.
Yeah.
Yep.
And 150
Never a dull
degree
moment in the
summer.
weather business. But Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest. We got a good show tonight. And obviously, there's a lot to talk about. So let's crank her up.
Yeah, let's make sure that we can hear our guest and that he can hear us.
Yes, please tell me you can hear me.
Yes,
Hey,
we can
Pete.
hear you.
Yeah.
Pete, we
Right.
were having
Yes.
PTSD back to our Google Hangout days there for a minute. The way it used to be, Troy. Remember those days?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was about a 30% chance we'd get a guest on the show or not.
And the weird thing about that, the higher the IQ, the greater the academics of these people, the lower the chance of them figuring out Hangouts. I mean, I never understood that.
Yeah, well,
Stooges like me could figure it out, but the PhD guys couldn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've already said his name tonight. So Pete Wolf is a retired meteorologist, 35 years in the National Weather Service, including 26 years as a science and operations officer. He's been a leader in forecaster training, mesoscale analysis, and radar interpretation, helping National Weather Service offices improve morning decision making and lead times for severe weather hazards. Pete, it's nice to have you back on the show tonight.
Nice to be back, sir. How are you?
Oh, couldn't be better. Couldn't be better, I guess. I had a fun day today. I'm getting a new assistant, and it is so nice. Somebody to manage all this 476 emails. Nothing like James Spann gets. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
he'd need like an army of assistants
Yeah.
over there. But just to manage mine takes a full-time person. But it's sure good to have you here. So Pete, take us back to the beginning. You know, what sparked your interest in weather?
Oh, I had Hurricane David in 1979.
1979.
And I grew up on Hilton Head, South Carolina, which is right near Savannah. And it went right overhead. And that's when I first learned about the fun of evacuations. With bumper to bumper traffic the whole way. So really, from my whole experience from there all the way to adulthood, it doesn't surprise me why people don't want to evacuate, because it's pure hell sometimes, trying to get to a place or get back. But that storm started my interest, and I never looked back. I went to school at Penn State, which I really enjoyed, and don't know why I didn't go to OU. It's my interest in severe weather, but I think my choice for my family was Penn State or Florida State, and I just needed a little more distance, so I went to Penn State and enjoyed that. But yeah, that's where it all really began.
That's pretty awesome. So talk about how you got started in the weather service and how your weather service career progressed.
So I almost went to AccuWeather. They're also positioned there. I was offered a 3-year contract there for $11,000, $12,000, $13,000, and I didn't know how I was going to survive on that. But at the same time, I got a summer intern program in Philadelphia. So I lived in my roommate's family's 3rd floor because I had no money, and took the subway downtown Philadelphia. That's where the office was at the time. This is back in 1989. And I remember running a lot, especially on night shifts, running through drug-filled neighborhoods to get to downtown Philadelphia in the middle of the night. So that was quite an experience. But that's where it began. And then I became an intern in Richmond, Virginia. And this is an office with all new interns about my age. And so that was really kind of cool. We all kind of grew up in the organization together. This was back in the old days when we had state WSFOs, forecast offices, and we had little local WSOs, service offices. And I was in a service office. And the biggest event in my career happened there. I handled the EF4 tornado that hit Petersburg, Virginia. I think it was August of 92. It was in August. It was a foggy day. We were lacking in stability. It was August. It was not tornado season. And we had a slight risk. It was very conditional. The fog broke. The storms built up. And this was before Doppler radar. And so I handled my first tornado outbreak by myself, because we only had one person on duty at the time. And that was a little outrageous. I think I might have set a world record for fastest like 40 or 50-yard dash within a weather facility, going back and forth between issuing warnings and going to the radio room, rushing it, clearing a tape, putting it in, broadcasting, hit the alarm, racing back for the next report, next warning. I did it like 6 or 7 times. I was physically exhausted by the end of that. But it was one where we had no Doppler radar. And so all the radar showed was a little band of green. There was nothing there. And the only thing that saved me was a spotter network that happened to have rebuilt in Central Virginia that saved my behind in that event, allowed warnings to go out. That was really a big positive for the importance of spotter networks, which exists even today.
Yeah, that tornado hit a Walmart, didn't it?
Hit a Walmart,
I'm-
it threw a train locomotive into the air. You know how heavy those things are. It was outrageous. I think they wanted to rate that F5, but that was, I think, one of the beginnings of the controversy of, you know, F5 or F4, who was going to rate that we're still seeing today. But yeah, it was a moderate rain shower, and within it was a massive tornado. And I think I remember seeing a picture in the newspaper, or someone had a picture of it. It was outrageous. I mean, there was no lightning, no thunder. It was only up to about it was only about 25,000 feet tall. And it had a massive tornado. And then the storms moved east, blew up to 50,000 feet, but they only had EF0s and EF1s then. So, you know, explain that to me, how that was the case. But that was an outrageous day. A lot of unexplainable stuff that we saw. So
Yeah, is that still the biggest tornado outbreak in Virginia history, or has it been
I think it was
surpassed
beaten.
since then?
No, I think that was beaten like a decade or so later.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had bigger ones.
Yeah. Now, talk about the synoptic setup, though. That sounds pretty fascinating. A bunch of low top supercells in the summer in
It was,
Virginia.
and no, it doesn't make any sense. It was a decent upper trough that came in. It was lower than normal instability because we had fog. There was enough instability, obviously, to get storms to go. Plenty of abnormally strong shear given that trough. But yeah, it was crazy. That's not really their time of the season for significant supercell tornadoes, which is what it was. They had just installed the Doppler radar in DC, and they're still in testing mode. And so I got to see a picture of it. And it was a supercell. It was a classic discrete supercell that the old radar would never show. You would never have known that was the case on the old radar. But yeah, it was crazy. And
No
it went
hook
right across
echo
Walmart.
or anything on the regular radar. No hook echo or anything like
Nothing.
that.
It was a
Wow.
band. I remember it was just a band of, you know, we had those little green scopes or whatever. It was everything was in green color. It was just a band of green. The actual radar operator in Southern Virginia didn't see anything. Didn't know. He had no clue what was going on. Obviously, because there were no clues on radar. It was of no help to them that day, and that was the first real clear illustration of how much better Doppler radar is today than the old radars of the past.
I just don't think about, how that 30 years is a big difference. Between 1993 when that tornado happened and today, it's a big difference, obviously.
Yes.
And you've seen a lot. You spend much of your career improving warning decision making. So talk about, that's obviously a big change, Doppler radar. What are some of the other key changes you've seen
So yeah, so
over
Doppler
that
radar came
35
out
years?
30 years ago, and we still have it today. Warnings are basically the same as they were today. A little bit of formatting changes, but for the most part, still done the same way, same software, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of new stuff out there that we need to have out that's hung up in research for now. But one of the big things for me, so I was the kind of employee who would cry at home if I didn't get called in. It was a moderate day, and they had enough staff, and they didn't need me. I hated that. I wanted to be in the action, one of those kind of guys. Because I love the warning decision part. I like the challenge of trying to understand what the radar is showing. I'm one who doesn't focus just on hazard signatures. I like to try to understand why the radar is showing what it's showing in terms of structure, in terms of how a storm interacts with another storm or interacts with the environment to try to get lead time. So detection is little lead time. Prediction is lead time. And so my focus has always been on trying to enhance near-term prediction, trying to anticipate what the radar is going to show rather than waiting for it to show it. And one of the cool tools for that is something called mesoanalysis, where we utilize near storm environment, changing storm structure to try to understand why the radar is showing what it's showing at this point, as well as predicting what it's going to show in the next 20 or 30 minutes. And one of the most shocking things of this, given all the new tools and technologies that we have today, there's a tool you've probably heard of called WAFS, which is Worn On Forecast System. It's an ensemble. When that thing is on, it is on. I mean, when it hits a signal over and over, run after run, that's going to happen. Now, a lot of times it doesn't pick up stuff because it can't pick up the clear signal. It doesn't have a clear indication of what's going to happen. But boy, you can predict stuff an hour in advance. I know there was one example of a tornado that hit the north side of Nashville. This was a year or two ago, and I was in a mesoanalyst role. And the WASP was just insisting that there was going to be a supercell long track that was going to go right over the north side of Nashville. And over and over, consistent. And then, so when the supercell first formed in the spot where it was suggesting, I called the office. I told you're going to get a tornado there in an hour. According to this, it's a very strong signal that there's going to be one within an hour. I said, I know you don't have a warning out yet, but you might want to call emergency management at this point and just have them get ready response-wise. And an hour later, I swear to you, a tornado occurred. Significant one, hit the north side of Nashville. And I was like in shock. I'm like, I can't believe I could actually do that. And I've done that numerous times. I've predicted, baseball, hail, and other significant hazards well in advance of when radar showed the signature. Now, there are times when it shows something and nothing happened, but that usually was a case where it wasn't consistent. It was not a consistent signature. It wasn't picking up. It was getting hints, but it wasn't really locked in on something. But boy, when it locks in on something, it's amazing what's coming into the future as far as that type of technology and what it will allow us to do in the future to provide considerably more lead time than we provide even today. So mesoanalysis is the big tool. That's, to me, that is where I utilize environment, because a thunderstorm is nothing more than a product of its immediate environment, okay? It doesn't know where the cold front is. It doesn't know where the jet stream is. It just knows the environment around it and it responds to that environment. So if you understand that environment, then you have a leg up on everybody else who's just looking for signatures, because you can anticipate, you can forecast. And it's incredibly fun. It's incredibly challenging, but it's incredibly fun when you hit one. And that is one of those things I think, and I'm in retirement now, I still try to look at ways to, in operations, so that I can provide that somehow, because I enjoy that challenge so much.
So talk to us practitioners for a minute. What are the most important tools we should be relying on when we're trying to do that?
So obviously the two most important.
Give me some good tips there that we can all use
really
tomorrow
the two
night.
key tips is the photograph and the sounding, is understanding those two tools. You got to understand those. You got to understand how not only what they show, what the photograph shows in terms of general storm environment, but you have to understand how a given storm is locally altering that. So I look for things like enhanced storm inflow. I look for things like storms that, where the mesocyclone is tracking, what environment, in terms of the sounding and the photograph, that rotating updraft is likely experiencing. So if a storm is, let's say you have a mesocyclone that's tracking towards the big forward flank downdraft area of the storm, that's all rain-cooled air, erratic winds, messed up photograph, not a very great environment for tornadoes. And there was an event, I'll never forget it. It was a tornado outbreak in eastern Nebraska, western Iowa. It produced a lot of tornadoes, but I was able to discriminate between the storms that would produce and the storms that would not by understanding what the environment was that the rotating updraft was experiencing. If it was tracking right over the area affected by the center of the forward flank downdraft, that was not a favorable environment to get a tornado. It may have rotation in the updraft. It just was not a favorable environment. But the storms that deviated just 10, 15 degrees to the right would take the mesocyclone along the eastern flank of the forward flank downdraft. That's where you have a gradient between rain-cooled air and warm environment air. And bad stuff happens where you have gradients. And so I could, and with that, in those areas, long track tornadoes occurred. It was amazing. And I could discriminate between the two, which I never thought we could do, in the past. But that's understanding environment and understanding what the updraft is experiencing. Looking at things like how the rear flank downdraft is, what its role in all of this is, too strong, too weak, and so forth. Amazing what you can do if you go beyond radar signatures alone. And that's part of the problem, I think, as far as, the warning program itself, it's focused too much on signatures. And so they can't increase lead time. Our lead time has been stagnant for decades, particularly for tornadoes. And to me, the key, especially for the human, the meteorologist, is not just interpreting the radar. I think AI is going to do that for us in the future. But it's being able to predict what's going to happen beforehand, before the signature develops, and discriminating between which ones will produce a tornado and which ones will not, with a decent level of accuracy and lead time.
So James A., you've got a pick tonight that's interesting. Is this a good time, or is that too QLCS-y for what Pete's talking about? To throw that up there tonight and have you guys talk about it at this point in the show.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can pull it up if you want me to.
Yeah,
Or
let's do that. I think you and Pete should kind of walk us through it. Pete, it's a sounding tonight from Southwest Oklahoma.
For tonight?
let's
Yeah,
see if
for
I can.
tonight.
Yeah, it looks kind of interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, so
I was,
James is sharing that in just a second here, and I think it would be
I
fun
was rather
to.
shocked at how much destabilization occurs after midnight tonight, from both moistening below and cooling from above over western Oklahoma, even up in my area in southern Kansas.
Yeah, because you see some cold air advection going
Yeah, oh yeah,
on
you
right
certainly
above the
do. That helps.
surface.
So
You
lap
know.
rates will really steepen, because I didn't think we were going to have much tonight, and all of a sudden I see we're on a slight risk and an enhanced risk to the south, and I'm like, what? And so yeah, you see that cold air aloft. You see how steep the lap rates are aloft.
So
And there's
go
moist down
crazy
low.
here, Pete. You and James A., y'all just fight
and
over
be
this
kind of
sounding.
descriptive for those that
Yeah,
are listening on the
we're
audio
looking at a
side.
sounding from
Yep.
the Sharp Eye program. I never know if I'm
Yeah,
saying
this
that
is
right or not.
the
That's
NAM
16.
sounding.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, and so it's I mean, we'll start like Pete said, if you look at the SCUT and the hodograph in the upper right corner gives you a trace of the wind's strength and direction as you go upward. And one of the things I look for is the orientation of that 0 to 3 kilometer shear vector with the expected front orientation. So we get a front like this, it's going to be pretty linear. I expect most of the convection to be linear, but that shear vector is also pretty perpendicular to the front. So it's kind of a west southwest and east northeast orientation. So if you get a segment of the line that gets close to perpendicular with the strength, and I've circled some of the parameters down at the bottom that kind of caught my eye. This is kind of the quick 30-second look at just kind of a shot of sounding threat, basically. And those shear magnitudes are high enough that you don't have to get an orientation exactly perpendicular. Seen these things go with about 30 knots of component magnitude, go QLCS. And with the kinematics that we have in place here, and there's plenty of surface cape. That's what I circled down in the lower left. And then that 3 cape is basically a good measure of lower atmospheric buoyancy. So surface cape and lower atmospheric buoyancy with really high shear magnitudes. And it looks like we could have QLCS tornadoes out of any segment of the line. And basically south central Oklahoma and north central Texas is where this is kind of a proximity sounding of. So get part of the line oriented that way, and you're gonna have to be ready to play whack-a-mole with QLCS tornado warnings.
Yep. And in addition, I noticed that on the lower left corner, the lapse rates are very high for the middle of the night. And you have very strong mid-level shear. You go from, it looks like about 40 knots at 700 millibars to 100 knots at 300 millibars. Very strong mid-level vertical shear, very ideal for very large hailstones. You got dry layer, air above moist layer. So strong storm relative flow, so strong target separation between large and small targets. Very favorable for very large hail. You got everything for wind. All hazards look ideal in that particular sounding. So now in this example, you have helicity values in the 400s, and which in and of itself is probably more than sufficient, like as was mentioned for QLCS tornadoes. If they were in the 200s, I would suggest there needs to be an enhancement in some manner. Sometimes storms can generate that enhancement, can locally back winds, can locally enhance inflow. And when you have areas, when you have signatures on a radar of enhanced inflow, that's our helicity maxima. where you might have double or triple helicity in a local area that is ingested in the updraft. And so you may have a situation and some days where you have a marginal environment for tornadoes, but the storms themselves can locally enhance or also locally deter tornado development as well. This event does not look like it needs much enhancement. It looks that is pretty impressive for 6 in the middle of the night.
Yeah, super low LCLs too, and and one other thing in the photograph, again, looking at that orientation of kind of northwest to southeast being key. If you look at the bunkers right moving vector, that's what that circle is. I mean, kind of getting into the weeds here too, but you draw that line back up to the lowest level of the actual photograph line. It's nearly perpendicular, so nearly all of this is streamwise vorticity feeding into this. So it definitely looks QLCSy to me.
I would say if there's one negative that this shows, I mean, I think it's going to change over time. A lot of people, I know Dr. Ariel Cohen is one who point out the little loop in the photograph, if I'm looking at it correctly, because the wind, there's actually a layer of backing winds and then veering winds around, looks like around 600 millibars. Sometimes that can affect storm relative flow and how precipitation is distributed. That could be a negative for tornadoes. Usually you just want to see a long clockwise curve of the photograph, particularly in that red color, the inflow layer. So they're at the very top part of the inflow layer, looks like it loops around, forms a loop. That sometimes can be a negative. Whether it will inhibit or not, we'll see. It's actually just above the yellow arrow there. In the red, where you see the red curves around and then becomes green. It is a big loop right there. Yeah, right there. There's a little loop in the photograph. That's one potential negative that we would want to kind of. You can see actually at 700 millibars, there's actually a relative weakness. It goes from 55 knots down to 40 knots and then back up to 70 knots. That weakness is causing that loop. And I've seen some research suggesting sometimes that can be an unfavorable photograph signature when it comes to trying to get tornado. Not necessarily a complete deterrent, but it's just not as favorable as not having that little loop, that little minimum in the wind aloft.
Now, I've always heard that, the SRHs don't come into play as much on linear. So talk about that for a minute. How do we reconcile that in a situation like this? Because we get a lot of this in Alabama. We get a big line coming in like this. It's going to happen tomorrow night again. We'll have really high SRH values. How do we know when that's not applicable?
For linear, I mean, I think there is some application to at least having an ingest of streamwise vorticity, but the approach is different. You're not looking at it the same way you do for supercells, so we have something that comes down from above. This develops down low and spins upward. And so for linear, I look at 3 Cape, which is circled here, the low level acceleration. And then there's a 3 ingredient approach to looking at QLCS tornadoes. You got to have, as was mentioned, that 0 to 3 kilometer shear vector at an angle to the initiating boundary. You have to have balance between inflow and outflow. If you don't have that balance, you can't get it's very difficult to get a tornado. Either you can't get a circulation to develop and get to the ground, or you cut it off before it can really get going. You need to have a balance where you have inflow and outflow basically equal to each other. And where that tends to occur, especially where you have very strong inflow, which might happen tonight with the strong fields, is where you have a bowing segment. So you have a very intense outflow matching very intense inflow, and if there's balance, that's a favorite area for QLCS tornado. I hope that makes sense.
Talk about the critical angle for a minute. Pete, you go, and James A, throw in any commentary there in both QLCS and supercell situations.
I don't know. I don't follow that. I don't really focus on critical angle as much.
James A, you got any input on that? Because I know you like that number to be around 90 in a supercell situation, because that's streamwise vorticity, being maximized. And so when I see 45, I'm, always a little, a little skeptical. But I don't know if that applies to linear or, to supercell too. So, that's a number that's sort of unusual to me. And anybody else on the panel, Kim or anybody, have any insight on that? Because I've wanted to learn about that critical angle. I need to reach out to our friend Kevin Laws over here and see if he's on text and bother him tonight. See if he's
I've
watching.
always, yeah, I've always seen it in reference to supercell environments, and again, this is going to be embedded pieces in linear convection, so the parameter space is probably going to be a little bit different than what you get with classic supercells. But again, the ingredients that make a supercell make it spin, and those same ingredients make line segments spin too. It's all about a vigorous updraft in a good environment.
Well, I hope I didn't spoil your pick of the week, James A., but that was a really fun opportunity to look at that. And I hope some of our viewers that might be listeners, if you get a chance to go back at this point in the show and peek at that sounding, that's a really good initial primer. And there's some great YouTube videos. Tim Vasquez and who's some other ones? Kim, Troy. I've seen some great ones. Some of our friends have been on here. Cameron Nixon.
Yep.
Have done fabulous videos, and we can learn so much. Tim Vasquez's book, about soundings and photographs, just superior. So these are great places to go and learn this stuff if you're a young meteorologist or someone who's up and coming, just wanting to learn more or hone your craft a little bit. So that's really cool stuff. Kim, why don't you add that comment in about our good friend Ariel?
Oh yeah, Pete mentioned Ariel. He has a great series of lectures posted from when he was at SPC, and he put together a class, a forecasting sphere with the forecasting class at OU. So lots of content.
Find
James A.
I was gonna say, find the Rich Thompson and Roger Edwards forecasting seminar they put on for a lot of OU undergrads a few years ago. That's on YouTube too, and it's a series. It's really, really good for meteorologists of all ages and educations and weather hobbyists too.
Span, I need a sabbatical for about 3 months so I can go and watch all these YouTube videos that are out there. What do you say?
I need a sabbatical for 3 years to watch some videos.
That's how we get through winter.
Oh, exactly. And our friend Cameron Nixon hasn't had the best luck on the show, has he had, James A.?
No, it's man, that night was amazing. And it would always cut out right when he was getting to the most important point. I go figure.
Oh, it was interesting, that's for sure. So Pete, talk about the Monster Storms Initiative, what it is, how it came to be, and what you're doing with it.
So it's my desire to stay in operations, even though I'm retired. It's one of the things I've enjoyed so much. My focus is not on. I think we overfocus on marginally severe stuff. I know I've had discussions with my former warning coordination person on this. We were kind of in agreement. We really need an extreme storm warning, not just a severe thunderstorm warning, because the criteria goes down to levels that, unless you have a tree over you, are not deadly. 1-inch hail can hurt a little bit, I guess, if you're outside in it. But I've seen plenty of 60, 70-mile-an-hour winds with little damage unless you have trees that are susceptible to those. Now in Florida, 50-mile-an-hour winds will bring trees down. That's not even severe criteria. That's always been a challenge down there. And what do you do when you have sub-severe weather, but yet it produces damage? But for the most part, marginal severe criteria, generally speaking, is not a threat to life and property, except in circumstances like if you have a tree over your house, a shallow-rooted tree over your house, you're in danger for that. And so I'm focused more on the higher end stuff, the stuff that is more of a threat to life and property, the type of weather where we tend to see injuries and fatalities and more significant damage. And I'm focused on what we've talked about, trying to utilize these meta-analysis tools to try to predict these events, and then utilize tools like radar to more accurately track them than just based on warnings alone. So I developed site. So that's one part of it, is the operational part. So tomorrow I'll be working for covering eastern Oklahoma and probably eastern Texas during the daytime. I won't be up at 3 in the morning, but eastern Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, maybe western Mississippi during the day, and tracking data. I have a Twitter account that I just post on there images and information about storm scale type event environments and signatures and so forth, to try to kind of anticipate these events and show how you can anticipate and not just wait for radar signatures to appear in the aim of trying to get greater lead time. I would say, a good audience, TV weather folks would be a good audience for that, because that gives you an advantage. Again, you can look for clues that come up on that you can go after a potential event, but even before the warning goes out or before the signature comes out, and can do it fairly accurately. That's one component. The second component is kind of an educational side. One of the things I want to do, I'm actually working now, is developing, I wouldn't call it a summer camp, but some type of a summer program for the junior high and high school kids that focuses on developing skills like interpreting radar, interpreting satellite, reading the sky, kind of an amateur weatherman type skill, to help protect from life-threatening weather. I'm doing a test run this summer in Kansas, and we'll see how that goes. But that could be fun, like a 3.5-day type interactive camp for students. And then also, the radar type training. Most people can kind of get a sense on radar, even without the training, where the danger is. And that's really, really important. One of the worst things I think you can do is just act based on a warning. Because unfortunately, warnings have very large false alarm areas. And I don't know the purpose of taking cover if you're not in the path of the hazard. And likewise, we don't want people to ignore warnings because they've had so many false alarms. We want people to confirm the threat. That's been a big topic of social science research, is the data of threat confirmation as an important step from warning to action. And we tell people that. We tell people to take cover. What we really should be telling people is, confirm the threat.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second, because maybe I need to change my messaging. Kim, I want to hear from you here. Because one of the things, I usually say is, hey, act immediately when you hear the warning. But this is practical advice right here. So my social science expert on the panel, tell me, what should I say when I'm talking to viewers tomorrow night? When they're in a tornado warning.
Well, there's no single perfect. I mean, seeing people have an impetus to act is probably a fine thing to say, but in education, in an education stance, telling people that you'd be well off knowing here's how you confirm the threat, here's what to look for, is really wise, because we know that's what people really actually do. There's no circumventing it, as much as some have wished that we could do so. So I really appreciate what Pete has brought up, and that's my inclination too, is we should be connecting folks with, if you're seeing, like, if you're looking outside, here's what you should be looking for. And I think what's important about that is it'll vary from case to case. There are days like, the mess tonight is not going to be one of those clear cut. I mean, not only is it nocturnal, that messier hodograph tends to portend more of the rain wrapped circulation. So what you'd want to tell people is, don't count on being able to see anything, and there are days where when you get the supercell driven monster wedges, what people see is going to be a black wall. It's not going to be the Wizard of Oz tornado. I've encountered survivors who didn't know what they were looking at, and they were staring straight at a mile wide wedge, but it's not what they think it's going to be. So I really appreciate that instinct, that idea, borrowing from our findings in the social science to say, here's what to look for. And I think that there's a lot more ground we could pave there.
And by the time they get to you as the broadcaster, James A. or James Spann, then they're already in the confirmation process at that point. So I guess the messaging is slightly different, because once they get to you, they've already heard the weather radio go off, or maybe they've heard the sirens, and so That's a different situation.
Yeah, and I think what Kim brought up is really important, and I've tried to work this into my social media, just kind of awareness posts morning of expected severe weather, is that if it's not going to be a classic event that most people are familiar with, to actually put it in writing, this will not be like most other severe weather events. This will be fast onset with little or no visual confirmation or ability to see any tornadoes out of this. So I think that's critical. I mean, hopefully you're getting that in the back of somebody's mind that might trigger something when a warning's issued. I'm not sure, but it is good for awareness that not every event is the same event.
Pete, you were going somewhere
Yeah.
when I went to James A there. So finish
So
out your thought.
here's what's fascinating to me. Weather service meteorologists are given full radar training and ultimately end up providing very broad scale information. They have 300 square mile warnings. They tell everyone in that 45-minute warning to take cover now, even though we not necessarily want that. And the people who are so important for downscaling the threat, that's the TV meteorologists. They're the ones people turn to say, is it heading toward me? And they're the ones who get a watered down radar training at best. I don't understand why why the government does not give them the same level. I think it's even more important to TV meteorologists because they need to be able to downscale. They need to know exactly what they're looking at and be able to downscale that down to town level and say, yeah, you have this 300 square mile tornado warning, but it's a small strip that for the next 10, 15 minutes, this is the area we want you to take cover. We don't want you to take cover further downstream because you're not going to stay there. Here's where we want you to take cover. And they should be the ones, getting the training for that. That makes no sense to me. I never did. I've done training for TV folks in some of the places where I've worked, and to kind of explain that value that they provide. That's key to getting people to make the right decision. Is to know, are they actually in danger or not? And if so, when? Within this 45-minute period, do I need my 10 minutes to take cover? And government doesn't provide that, unfortunately.
So is the secret then shorter, smaller polygons that get updated more frequently, or what's
No, I don't
happened
think
there?
so. I don't think so
What's
because
happened with that?
it's too much work to do that. And
Okay, that's the
it's
downside. It's too
we
much
really need to
work
see
to
the
create them.
updates as much as there should be. What we need is a tool to downscale. You have this warning, which is good. It does its job. It tells people there's a threat somewhere in this warning at some time during the period. But you need something else that then, and I don't understand. I don't think the private sector would be trying to develop this. Here's the next 10-minute period. Here's where we want you to take cover right now. And I wish there was something like a partner to TV folks that could create the graphics quickly so that you could be on the air and say, here's 10 minutes, here's the next 10 minutes, and that sort of thing. Now, there is a program you might have heard called TIM, Threats in Motion. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, we've only been talking about it for how many years, Kim?
Yep, I started talking about that about 12 years ago. Fantastic idea. Imagine being a TV person on the air and the hazard is moving out of the polygon and you're waiting for the dang warning downstream and it's not out yet. And you're just kind of, what do you do? Are you going to go, you have to make the call yourself? That would be completely gone with TIM because the storm would always be in the back part of the polygon at all times. The polygon would move with the hazard. And as such, the polygon would be smaller, much smaller, because it moves with the hazard. And it's stuck in research. I mean, as you know, the polygon is nothing more than those few lines of text at the bottom of the warning that describe where the vertices are of the polygon. That's all the polygon is. And it would be so easy to just utilize a simple mathematical computation based on the storm motion vector to change those vertices every 5 minutes. And then the polygon moves. Sounds easy, but no, we're developing brand new technology doing all kinds of ridiculous stuff that is not necessary, and it's been stuck in research ever since. And it's really been unfortunate. I was on the original storm-based warnings team, and that approach was good. It was a good, but it was supposed to be a starting point. It was not supposed to be the end. It was supposed to be a part of evolution that never occurred, which is sad to me, because we really can do in 2025. We can do considerably better than it's done today. You know,
Is it more a stuck in research or more stuck in dissemination problem, Pete?
well, it's because of how complicated they've made it. It's a dissemination issue. It doesn't have to be. As I say, it could be a very simple approach that I just gave you to move the polygon, and every time a new county entered the polygon, you alert that county. You know, again, this is 2025 technology, not 1990s technology that the Weather Service is still using. You know, we have to catch up to where what today's technology can support, and it is far better than what's currently being used. In fact, there's a new tool called Hazard Services that's being implemented in the Weather Service, and it's good for flooding, it's good for winter, and so forth. But I just tested the convective, the thunderstorm one, and all they did is port the old software into that program. So they're still using the old Warren Gen software, which is not good. It's not good software at all. Just no focus on improving that, unfortunately.
Well, and that's scary given potentially identifiable cuts that are coming down the road.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in just a little bit, probably a little bit more, unless everybody wants to go there now. I wanted to spend some time, and I don't know, Pete, what do you think? You have this 10-question radar interpretation quiz. It may be too much for tonight. What do y'all think, panelists? Should we take Pete's quiz?
Red is
That, or I
bad,
can just go
right?
through it quickly if you like.
What do you think, James A?
Red is bad unless it's wine.
Troy Kimmel, should we take Pete's quiz? Here real
Absolutely,
quick?
as long as I
All
have the answers, at which time I'm going to duck out if I don't. I'm embarrassed. I'll be embarrassed.
Bingo.
All
right.
Bingo.
Troy's internet goes bad. We'll know what's
Exactly.
happening. All right. Well, Pete, why don't you do that? That'd be fun.
Okay, I'm gonna try and share my screen here. Let's see if I can get this to work. Where is my well, let's try it.
It's a good start.
Let's see.
You see your Zoom.
Where is? Oh,
Yeah, we see a pretty dog.
I'm trying to find.
That's supposed to be.
This is where Span
right,
fires
James?
off about that operating system.
Yeah, no comment. I have no comment on
Oh, there we go.
Microsoft.
Do you
And
see?
we're seeing some. Be sure
do
that
you
nothing
see
gets on
question
there.
one?
It
we
should
go.
be seen.
Yeah, we see question
Yeah.
number 1.
Okay, so here we're saying Doppler radar can detect different precipitation types to tornadoes and damaging winds from thunderstorms. Is this true or false, or simply I don't know?
All right, this is like the ACT, Okay, all right, here we go.
Where's my number 2 pencil?
No. I don't. Seems like it seems like Pete to me. This one is a little. I'm leery of it the way that it's worded, but I wonder. I've got to wonder if somewhere or another it's leaning toward false.
I'll lean toward true.
Yeah.
I've seen all 3.
See,
Okay.
we don't trust any of these questions. That's our
I
problem.
wouldn't trust them.
I
I would
love
not
you,
trust
Pete.
them. So, in fact, the answer, if I show you, is actually false. And the reason is radar only detects what? Energy. It sends out pulses of energy, and all it detects are those little bits of energy that bounce off of snowflakes or raindrops and return to the radar. That's all that's detected. Everything we get from radar is based on that little bit of energy that gets back to the radar. That's kind of the miracle of radar, is what we get from just that little bit of energy. Does that make sense?
I feel like Admiral Akbar in Return of the Jedi. It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah.
Exactly.
So radar does not detect. It can't detect actual precipitation. It can't detect tornadoes. Remember that the only reason we can even infer tornadoes or damaging winds is due to the phase shift of the waves. That's the Doppler effect. We detect what it detects is the phase shift of the waves and can determine whether the targets are moving toward the radar or away from the radar. That's it. It can't detect circulations. We have to infer circulations based on the patterns on a velocity image, but it does not directly detect that. But tornadoes warnings will still say radar detects tornadoes. So the second question is, on a base reflectivity image, say 0.5 degrees, we can determine how severe a line of storms is based on how high the reflectivity values are with the storms. So 65 dBz, likely a more severe storm than 55 dBz. True or false, or I don't know.
False.
Directly false.
Well, how do
But-
you define severe?
As the Weather Service does.
58 mile per hour or 1-inch diameter hail, right?
Yep. In other words, should I be putting a warning out based on the reflectivity values?
No.
So
No.
you can't look at any other product except reflectivity then.
Yeah, the question is just whether you can determine that just from a base reflectivity image. Not that you can't do. I'm just saying, can you determine that just from a base reflectivity image?
I'll vote false.
Yeah,
Me
voting
too.
false.
You
As I
have
look at
an
my base
idea, but I think
reflectivity
that
image.
you have an idea, but the answer I think is false.
It is false. Yes.
Yeah.
Remember, the
Ding, ding, ding,
reflectivity
ding.
only relates to the size of the target or the number of targets or both. It has nothing to do with necessarily. Now, obviously, if you have like a 70 dBz core, there probably is
Right.
large scale in there.
That's the thing,
But
is
it
you
could
can
also
make
be
some
extreme
pretty good
rain.
inferences, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. You're inferring is not detecting. And okay, so the third question is, on this base reflectivity image, what hazard are we looking at here? What do you think is the most likely hazard we're seeing that the signatures here, this reflectivity image is suggesting?
I say large hail.
I say large hail.
Yeah, me too.
I see 3-body scatter spike.
Spike.
That's right. That's a 3-body scatter spike. We have very high reflectivity values as well. So yeah, that would most likely be large hail. Not to say it couldn't be other hazards, but those are what the clues that the scattered hail spike and so forth are suggesting.
And that'd look cool in correlation coefficient. That'd be
Yeah.
really neat.
Okay, so here on your radar app, you can look at colored precipitation types. And so blue is snow, magenta is ice or a wintry mix, and green to red is rain. So this is actually in Alabama, northwest of Birmingham, the town of Hamilton I've highlighted here with the yellow oval. What precipitation type of the ground is the radar detecting at Hamilton?
Jen.
Did you say
D all day. D
Well-
D
well-
all day long. D.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, you're asking what type of precipitation at the ground is the radar. It's not detecting precipitation at the ground. I don't know.
Correct. That's right.
So, okay.
Which goes to my answer of D.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's D and E. F, D and E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be E too.
I'm all about I don't know.
So, but yeah, that's absolutely right. First of
Okay.
all, radar can't detect precipitation type.
Yeah. Okay. There you
But
go.
even if it could, it's the beam from Birmingham is 1,000, maybe even 10,000 feet above
Yeah.
the ground by the
Yeah.
time it gets to the Mississippi border. And so that's just aloft. So what you're seeing, of course, is I believe, color coded by the private sector based on what's being reported at the surface. So if Hamilton turned to snow, that blue area would probably suddenly jump into Hamilton's area. But yes, radar cannot actually detect precipitation type.
Hamilton, that's the room where it happens, right there. Snow or
Yeah.
ice.
8,676 feet.
Okay, this is an animation, so I got to play this one. This is a pretty fascinating animation here. We're looking at, this is the X marks downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hmm.
So here we have, and ignore that sound there. Let me turn that off. So we have a storm that's nearly stationary with supercell characteristics, but it's not moving. And so the question is, what for downtown Minneapolis? I'm sorry, let's see here. Let me stop this. So what is the primary hazard for downtown Minneapolis, the white X?
Right at the spot where there's an X only,
Yep.
right?
That's downtown. I'll play it again here.
I would say
Over the entire
flash
loop or
flood.
just that? Yeah,
Yeah, over the
exactly.
entire loop here.
I think for the X, that X spot, the answer, in my opinion, would be flash flood.
Yeah, I'm kind of going that way.
Yep.
Yeah,
See,
unless
burst
we
after
had Ville
burst
or
of
something.
red over downtown. You see right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Now this area probably is under a severe thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning and a flash flood warning, probably all at the same time. So how do you know what the hazard is for downtown Minneapolis, or are you gonna go downstairs because of the threat of a tornado, or are you gonna go upstairs because of the threat of a flood? This is an example of how radar, where you can't just use the warnings alone. To know what to do and what the threat is for your area and when that threat will be, radar is really one of the best tools. And now, so you clearly see a tornado signature there south of Minneapolis. If it were to suddenly move north, then there would be a tornado threat, obviously. But with it several miles to the south, you're in the heavy rain, and that's it. You're under all these warnings, which is probably confusing. Yet the real threat is flood. So you either interpret radar on your own, or you have your TV meteorologist explain this, and they have to understand what the hazard is. Are they going on there, the air, saying everyone should take cover because of the tornado, or are they downscaling it based on radar to say where each hazard is located? Because there is value to being able to discriminate where the flood threat is, where the tornado threat is, where the hail threat or wind threat might be in this particular example. So yeah, so the correct answer is flash flood in this one.
Say that, James A.
God, now all the Twins fans are going to hate me. I said the way the Twins have been playing lately, we know the biggest hazard in downtown Minneapolis is bad baseball.
Yeah.
James will be here till midnight.
Have you been to the Twins' new stadium, James? Ben?
No, I need
No,
to.
you
It's on
gotta
the
do
list.
that.
It's on our hit
Yeah.
list.
Mhm.
Tickets are cheap.
Good summer to go.
So the next question is dealing with the product called vertically integrated liquid, or VIL. And I don't know if you guys utilize this product or not, or you have access to it or not, but what does this product tell us about a given storm in terms of threat or potential hazard?
I say
Hail product. Hail.
Me. Yeah.
So consensus is hail?
I'll say C.
Hail.
Wait,
That's right.
wait.
Yay.
Woohoo!
There's no
Got one
relationship
right.
between VIL and tornado, or for how long a severe storm will remain severe, or how much rain a storm's going to produce. It's basically the best. We're looking at depth and intensity of the core, which is related most to how large hail. Okay, so oops.
Let me throw this out there. Does anybody use VIL operationally anymore?
I do, or is that how about you guys?
I still do.
I show it on the air from time to time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very good tool for discriminating. If you have numerous storms, which is the most intense core-wise, it's still one of the better products.
Does your television system have a derived hail product, James A?
Yeah, I like to use the VIL density as well, because since VIL varies by seasonality, height of that vertical thing you're integrating, height of the storm. But yeah, or use the hail algorithm. Some of the dual pole hail size algorithms are actually really good. I'd like to see those popped out by the vendors pretty soon.
I am shockingly happy about what you just said about VIL density, because I came up with the first published paper on that topic that I actually worked with Steve Ambert in Tulsa on VIL density, and it's good that someone still uses that. That's excellent.
And it's right there. It's a click away on GR Analyst.
So here's a velocity interpretation question. So you see the radar is that black oval there, and so we're looking at an interesting signature to the southwest of the radar. What type of signature and what might that be representing here?
Oh, C, I
I'm
would say.
voting for B. B is my vote. B.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Convergence.
Yeah, it is
Okay.
convergence. It's B. Bravo.
Yeah.
I see the radar site now.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, you have to look at the radar site to kind of know the deal.
You have to. All we see is radial velocity, not total velocity. It's only what's the flow along the radial. So in this case,
Hey, that's my radar site too. Oh,
you'd be surprised how many people think that's a tornado.
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of curly Q going on northwest of that downburst, but
So I do want to point out in this example, how would a mesoanalyst interpret this? Because this could be just general convergence, or if it's associated with an intense storm like a supercell, it could pose some very important clues to imminent tornadogenesis. Oftentimes, tornado circulations begin as convergence, and they evolve into rotation. They'll become convergent rotation and then pure rotation. So
Yeah,
if we have
that's
this
the
storm that's
RF.
moving here, that's moving northeast, I'm seeing inflow in the red, and I'm seeing really high values here. So as a mesoanalyst, that's telling me we have very intense inflow, which means you can't use the hodograph, the general environment hodograph, because the low level part of the hodograph is completely different in this area right here in the bright red. There's likely double or triple the helicity here that would be flowing in this storm because of this enhanced inflow. And then this is probably representative of maybe a rear flank downdraft that's coming on the backside of the storm. And so I can kind of see what's going on and understand the environment the storms are in, how the structure is changing to be able to anticipate whether this could lead to tornado genesis or just lead to an intense storm, and that's it.
So what kind of warning was on this? Was there a tornado warning on this cell?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But I have seen cases of where warnings are issued for this.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen cases of warnings for shear axes, not actual rotation. That's an easy thing that people can misinterpret. It's got to be associated with a convective core. Okay, so question 8 is this one. This is probably one of the easier questions. You guys will get this one. I had to throw an easy one in.
Yeah, you have to read it for our audio listeners.
Oh, yeah. So it says from real-time radar imagery, how can you tell when a potentially severe thunderstorm will arrive in your location? Which is kind of important when you want to know when to take cover.
So A, you cannot tell as radar only shows the latest scan, does not show future scans. B, by comparing one radar site to another that are looking at the same storm. C, through the use of imagery animation. D, by looking at how the storm is changing vertically, not just horizontally. Or E, I don't know. I'm going to guess
maybe it's a simpleton. I'd say it's got to be C. I mean,
yeah, that's the only way.
What else the answer
just
could
extrapolate what
that's
the
correct.
movement is.
That's the value of animation, is to time arrivals and departures and so forth of signatures. So animation is really valuable for that. If we look at two more questions,
draw your own storm track.
Storm question.
Okay, so question number 9.
Across Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. And so based on what you see on this radar image, what location do you think the heaviest snow is falling at this point in time? A, B, or C, or D?
I'm going to say we're the highest.
And for those that are listening,
there.
what you need to do is go back and actually watch the video for this one, because it's kind of hard to describe this for the audio listeners. I'll
say D.
To me, it looks like the core is D. Yeah, it's a dog.
You're supposed to say E, Jen. That was your answer.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm trying. I thought I would try to answer for real.
So snow returns less energy back to the radar than rain, and as a result, reflectivity is less. So whereas orange and red represents heavy rain, dark green and yellow represent heavy snow. And so the darker the green shade is, the heavier the snow would be. In this case, like you said, it would be D. That would be the correct answer here.
Yay.
So D would be the correct answer in this one. The final one is an interesting one. Here we have a monster storm in Oklahoma. It's producing a large destructive tornado. It's
that thing is at Rick Smith's house.
Look at so which town
shelter, Cam.
here do you think is in imminent danger?
This is just Tuesday at Kim's house.
Well, I mean, do we have an animation here or
emotion or anything?
Nope, you have this image.
Any kind of loop. So you got a still image.
Yeah, still image.
I'm most worried about Newcastle, just that general look-see here, but
Newcastle.
I've got to say Newcastle.
Go with more.
Well,
always more. Can't go wrong with more.
Well, wait,
Roy.
If you got a still image, how do you know? I mean, if you don't
have
be
moving southeast, James.
James is onto it.
F. Let's go F.
I say G. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
But I know the environment, so
yeah,
so,
there you go.
No, you have to know which way it's going. There's no value to see just one image. If it's moving north, it'd be Mustang in danger. And I've seen storms that look like this that are moving north. I've seen storms that look like this that are moving south. And in which case Blanchard would be in danger. You don't know unless you understand which way it's obviously moving.
Good point.
So again, again, one of those things of where radar can be of value to you, not just images, but animations beyond just a warning itself. The warning, it's hard to interpret when you listen to a warning on weather radio. It's hard as it is to know where is the storm, where is it going, and where am I relative to all this just from that. And sometimes it's hard to, even if you read the text product. If you look at a warning, a text product from a very large warning area, the software tends to average all that information within that large area. And so it may not necessarily give you the actual towns that are in danger. I've seen warnings that have the wrong towns that are not in the path mentioned, and the towns in the path are not mentioned. That's a software issue. And so radar itself, real-time radar imagery, knowing where you are located on the image and how the storm is moving, will cut down your own false alarms considerably.
I spent the entire third grade with a World Book Atlas, so I know exactly where I was having to worry when the storm was moving northeast, north, and east, whatever it was, because there was no radar for me to look at.
So there are actually two categories of false alarms. There's what's called legitimate false alarms and unnecessary false alarms. Legitimate false alarms are when a circulation goes over your house. It's my job in government to alert you of that. It may or may not produce a tornado, but that threat is going over your house. That's why we issue warnings. There was a danger and you took cover even if a tornado doesn't occur. An unnecessary false alarm is when that circulation passes 10 to 15 miles to your north and you're in a warning. And you didn't need to be in a warning because you were never in danger. And the value of radar is to try to eliminate unnecessary false alarms. Yeah, there'll still be circulations that go over your house that don't produce a tornado, but for the most part, when you're taking cover when the radar shows your location is actually in danger, and not that your location is somewhere else in this 300 square mile warning polygon, if that makes sense. So, how did you guys do? Hopefully you got 9 or 10 of those correct. And then
That's
you're probably
what I'm
good
going
shape.
with, Troy. What about you? Did you get 9 or
Whatever
10
you
right?
say,
It's
Bill.
like self-grading,
Yeah, I'm with you.
yes.
If you got less than 7 correct, you don't have to admit it.
Yeah, got 7 less. How much do we have to shell out if we got less than 7 correct, Pete? What's it going to cost us?
Yeah.
But understanding radar, so what's interesting is that radar interpretation is a skill. You don't have to be a meteorologist to do this. You need a meteorologist to predict what the radar is going to show. But to interpret the data is a skill like learning how to drive or learning how to cook. You just have to have knowledge and practice. Oftentimes watching the TV station during events, you can learn an awful lot about, because they point out where the hook echo is and that type of thing. Knowing whether you're in danger or not. And to me, that's probably the greatest value of the TV meteorologist on the air live is cutting down the unnecessary false alarms. I mean, I'm hoping they're not on the air saying in the whole tornado warning, take cover now, but they're in fact zooming in and focusing on where it's going, where the next town is in danger. There was an example when I was in Jacksonville and I was working one of the very few strong tornadoes. They had an EF3 that occurred in Kingsland, Georgia, which is about 20 miles north of the office. I was on radar. I had an intern helping me. And yeah, I had warnings out. The signatures were classic. And I had 15, 20-minute lead times out easily. But I had the intern I was working with go on social media, go on our chat feature every 5 minutes and chat to the media. Here's where the danger is. Here's where it's going. And within 30 seconds of every chat, I'd hear it on a station that we were monitoring, them reading that word for word. That was amazing because obviously that's where the big audience is. And so we were not just providing these large warning areas, we were downscaling that every 5-10 minutes of who's the next town in danger. And that's where I think the value can be in government is not continuously focusing on warnings that we've done for 30, 40 years. But how do we downscale that to get rid of unnecessary false alarms and make sure that people who are actually in danger are the ones who are actually taking cover.
So Pete, that's cool. That was a lot of fun and very educational for us. Thank you. Talk for a second about what you think is the most misunderstood or least understood radar signature by meteorologists, and what we can do to be better with that.
Well, one of the biggest mistakes people make, not just on TV, but even the professional meteorologists in the government, is something you've probably heard of called side lobe contamination. Unfortunately, there isn't just one lobe of energy going from the radar. There's multiple lobes. Fortunately, the main lobe is the strongest one. So for the most part, it's not a problem. But when you have a big supercell with a big overhang where there's no reflectivity underneath the overhang, it's going to take what it detects in the overhang region at the top part of the storm and assume that that's actually the main beam. And so it's going to place that data on the lowest slice. And the result is often a bad velocity signature. How many times I've seen tornado warnings go out for this, and it's not a tornado. It's scary because it's red next to green, but it's in the wrong place. And, I think we've trained the media to focus on red next to green. And so it's easy to misinterpret and not understand that it has to be where the updraft is. It has to be co-located with the updraft core. It can't be on the edge of it. Rotation signatures on the edge of updrafts are the result of crosswise vorticity, not streamwise vorticity. And that's another thing that's often misinterpreted is that the rotation, again, is in the wrong spot. It's not co-located with the core of the updraft. But side lobe contamination is a real problem. And I've seen signatures that look awfully real, but it's not real, but sometimes it's harder to tell. The best thing you can do is look for gradients of color. Look for gradients because you don't just instantly go to bright green or bright red. There should be some gradients in there, especially with the higher resolution imagery that we have. That's the best really you can do. Or also look at things like spectrum width if you have access to that type of product and see if it shows bad data. It's a good product for looking at whether this data is bad or not. So that's probably the main one. I've seen occasionally on the TV someone seeing something that's not meteorological and calling them showers and not looking at the CC product, which we now have that can tell us, is it precipitation or is it not precipitation? How many times I've actually seen that even I'm almost thinking showers, and then I have to look at the CC. I'm like, oh wait, that's not real. That's something not meteorological. So those are kind of the two main ones I see that are often misinterpreted. That CC product, that's the main one that people look at for TDSs, and that's a real tough one because you've got to have what looks like a TDS signature where the rotation is. If it's not there, and if it's not where there's sufficient reflectivity, it's not real. It looks real, but it's not real. That's real hard. That's easily misinterpreted, both by very experienced folks and new folks.
That's very helpful. James A., anything you wanted to add? You're a big side load contamination guy. You're always spotting it and helping us look for it when we're in the heat of the battle.
It also, this is what's kind of interesting to me about side lobe contamination, just from the features that cause side lobe contamination to happen. It is a pretty good diagnoser that you've got a very robust supercell because you've got that overhang and the strong inflow and stuff. So just because it's side lobe contamination does not rule out the tornado threat, but it's not the rotation that's going to produce the tornado. You're diagnosing a supercell really well with it.
Yep. Good point.
So Pete, you've been very vocal about the need for modernization in the Weather Service, and you had a Facebook post some time ago that talked about some of the biggest gaps that you've identified. So let's just kind of walk through some of those. I'd love to hear the other panelists really chime in, especially in the recent news that we've been going through the past few weeks. Talk about efficiency of operations being improved, and offices working between each other, which may become increasingly important with overwhelmed and short-staffed offices.
Yeah, so the thing is, the Weather Service actually has a lot of meteorologists. It has over 1,500 meteorologists, which is, I don't know, 5 times or more that of a private company that works nationally. So there's a lot of meteorologists. The problem is they operate as 110 separate weather services. Each local office is its own entity. And, each office only has a certain amount of staff. And if they're short-staffed, then they're stuck. There's no real efficient approach for one office to support another. Oftentimes I see, and I'm to this day, even in retirement, I've never understood why it is that in an event like we're going to see tomorrow, so tomorrow will be a good example. We're going to have Dallas and Little Rock and Shreveport, and then working over to Jackson, completely overwhelmed with work and weather. Overtime, long hours, exhaustion. Meanwhile, you'll have 50 other offices where the weather's quiet, and all the staff are just doing their basic duties. And none of one are helping the other. And that makes no sense to me. We have all the meteorologists in the world. Even if the weather service were 10 or 20% understaffed, we would still have like 1,200 meteorologists. We just don't have an approach to effectively help each other out. My boss in Jacksonville actually had a good idea of trying to create virtual WFOs. That's a system by which people in quiet weather offices can enter and support offices that are in active weather. And so you're affected less by short staffing. The only answer we got to
Central
that
region is.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Central region is doing like a mezzo desk assistant like that, where they are borrowing somebody. And there's been a little bit of ad hoc use of that kind of thing with TV. But again, it's kind of random.
Troy
right.
here. I have a question for you. Before I get myself in trouble tonight, I'll try to avoid that.
You can't get in any
let's
trouble
do it.
anymore.
Let's
Troy,
get in
you're
trouble.
retired.
Pete,
You're
do you think,
retired.
Pete, do you think we need 122 weather forecast offices?
I don't.
Okay.
I really don't. Well, all right. I would suggest 120 decision support offices that are staffed like the old WSOs. We have 5 people because there is that in-person thing that's valuable, especially with emergency management and local media.
Yeah.
But I would prefer to have teams of expertise. I think expertise is valuable. I would much prefer to have a team that is expertise in severe weather warning operations, a team that is expertise in hydrology, a team with expertise on winter storms, rather than, because the alternative is having to train everyone on everything.
Yeah.
And that leads to average performance at best.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do.
Well, the one thing that we're sort of hearing, and I know that Tim and I've talked about a little bit, just what we're hearing, is that maybe we go to a little bit more of a centralization process with the WFOs. By the way, just to remind everyone, and I think I'm right, Pete, holler at me if I'm not, but I mean, the government, one thing that I really liked about Bill Proenza when he was Southern Region Director was that he always said that government closest to the people. And you know what that means in the Weather Service? It means the WFOs. The people out there that shovel out the warnings and operate the weather radios, those are the people you need to really support. And the Weather Service hasn't. It's historical. I mean, we got, I guess I can. Midland, the WFO, down 7 people effective today, down 7 people. I know that Boulder, Cheyenne, I named some other offices I know are down as well. And the chicken will come home to roost this spring at these places, I think. But I'm just, I just wonder if we're going to a more centralized effect and have people around. Like you say, Pete, you can't, and this is what brings up this building stuff I've heard today that I've seen articles on. You can close a WFO, but you can't close that radar that you may leave behind. And you need an ET or electronics person there. And you need a WCN that can be the local outreach person. But that would be sort of an 8 to 5 job. And I wonder if we're going to look primarily, particularly at WFOs that have upper air sites. That's one thing that we do need to maintain. And in a lot of cases here in the U.S., not in Alaska, but in the U.S., most of those are still manual launch, right?
Right.
So we need to have that. I think you're going to see an attention. People are going to start looking at that Southern Region, Pete, map the Southern Region has of all the WFOs, and they're going to start saying, okay, which one of these have our upper air sites? And I think that may be where some of this starts. But I respect your opinion because you've sort of been there and done that.
No, I
And then
agree. I mean, I
does
think we're going to go
politics
on the
come in?
forecast side, certainly. And I think, you know, what we're seeing now doesn't get the Weather Service, AI will. The stuff I've seen with AI, absolutely, I thought what I've seen was 10 to 20 years down the road. I was at the last NWA meeting. I don't know if any of you attended the last annual meeting. I was a day early, so I thought, hey, I'll just sit in on the broadcaster session to see what they cover. And there was an AI session, and my jaw dropped because they showed a lady doing the weather broadcast, but she wasn't real. She looked real, she sounded real, but she was not real. And I was like, how? That's now.
Yeah.
And
that scares me, Pete. That scares me.
It is. Things are going to, I mean, 20 to 30 years in the future, very different than today. Now, we couldn't say that 20 or 30 years ago. We really had no clue what was coming with the internet. But we're seeing clues of what that future is going to be in the next 20, 30 years. And it's just shocking to me how different it's going to be, how we're going to have to evolve. And it's going to be one where, how are people going to work if it takes over a lot of the duties that we currently need people for? The forecast realm, warning realm, those are going to be automated. And it might actually be better because think of the warning process right now. So I have a human looking at radar, okay? And they're spending all their time on radar, looking at signatures, typing up, issuing products, and so forth. They don't have time to look at environments. They don't have time to look at what this type of storm did in the past, but what 100 of storms like this did in the past. AI is going to be able to do all of that. It's going to know, based on this structure, what the last 100 storms of the same structure did in seconds. It's going to be able to take storm environment and incorporate that in seconds and be able to use all this to produce probabilistic information that'll generate better polygons, focus on the actual area of danger, far better than the human will. And it's shocking. So then the answer is, well, what's the human going to do? And my original answer was, well, hey, we'll do the communication side. And then I said in that conference, I'm like, crap, that's going to be taken over too. I think, it'll allow the Weather Service to put a voice in every single emergency operations center in every single county, which we can't do today. We do one briefing for everybody because we don't have the staff. But imagine that we could have a hologram of me in each emergency operations center, focus on their specific needs, far better than a human ever could. So big change, I think, is coming.
Well, one thing that I've said, and I said I'd shut up, and I'm not, so I apologize. But I've said, Pete, all along that one of the first things that's going to be a casualty in all this is going to be IDSS, because the day when the EOC calls and said we need a Weather Service person here or there in community events. Now, by the way, I think the private sector has a responsibility to play in where money, and by the way, I have vested interest in this, so I'll disclose that. I mean, I work with university football games and that sort of thing, get paid to do that. But where you have pro games or football games, that's money making thing. I don't think the Weather Service should be involved in that. I think they should have a consulting meteorologist, private sector company or whatever that works with them, that is in coordination with the National Weather Service. But IDSS is going to be one of the first casualties, in my opinion, which is sad because, Kim, that's part of weather ready nation, and so much of what the Weather Service is built.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been concern about that. We'll have to see how things shake out. Nobody knows the full extent of what has gone on just yet. That's been a lot of the focus of conversation today, is just what happened last week. There's been a lot of piecing things together. It's really interesting to experience from the inside. But I will say that Weather Service leadership is encouraging us to have like sort of a core 3 values, 3 things that we're keeping, our attention on going forward. And one of those 3 that they want is IDSS. So I think I heard that today and was heartened by it, but I'm also challenged by it. There's a lot that remains to be seen about just how we do that. So
I think it'll still be there, Kim. I just think there'll be less ability to do it to some degree. But
It really depends on how we evolve the
it's
forecast
true.
operations.
You're right.
It
You're right.
really does. Nope. I mean, that's the whole crux of this whole conversation you guys are having. What will the model be? And there might be other models, to consider. But I think there's, the challenges pose both a stress and an opportunity.
Yep.
And that's where the internal conversation is, and that's probably all I can or should say about
Well,
it.
Kim,
We're all just
one thing for
trying to
Pete,
put it central.
one thing for Pete too, and I think Pete made a good point about the infrastructure and how it's all set up. I had an interesting discussion with a weather service person in New Orleans when we were there for the AMS annual meetings, and they were pointing out to me how many copper lines, and people that are like me, like an old fart, that knows what a copper line is, um, how many copper lines the Weather Service still has in many cases. And do you know how expensive those copper lines, those hardwire, the Weather Service budget has got them all over the place, and I know how much they cost nowadays. You have, when you call AT&T to work on a copper line or a hard line, whatever's tied to it, they have to get someone special to do it. No one knows how to work on those anymore. They're AT&T's trying to get rid of them.
Yeah,
And so
now
they
we
charge.
now we have something in the hotel business called pots in a bag, which is like a virtual copper line, Troy.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like a copper head. If Dr. Neil were on here,
Neil,
exactly. So now, Pete, here's lightning round, and the panelists get ready because we got a lot to go through very quickly. Replacing AWIPS.
Yeah, that's such old technology. God, I still remember the day when it first came out. It was so horrible. It's painful even to remember it. It was so slow. And the point being on that is, what is it? It's 2025. It's 30 years later. I'm 30 years older. And the technology has advanced dramatically. The Weather Service has not. And AWIPS is just one example of where we can do better. Utilizing the cloud could be much more efficient in terms of data sharing and so forth than what we have now. AWIPS is not able to support backup very easily. It's very challenging to back up another office with that, and we can do better. Similar to that, a second technology is NOAA weather radio. We're still using old transmitters for this. Again, it's 2025. We have cell, satellite. Elon Musk might take this over. We might have Starlink weather radio soon. I don't know, but nevertheless, yeah, and we're seeing transmitters go down during severe weather. So it's not even the reliable technology we want it to be for people when other things go down, and we can do better. And you mentioned, Weather Service has a $1 billion budget. NASA has like 16 billion, and we're the ones with the protecting life and property mission. And it's been 30 years since we've had a modernization, and that modernization was fun. I'm so grateful I got to go through that. That was such a fun time. But we need another one. We need a better structure, a more efficient structure of how we operate, and that may very well involve a centralization. And I'm not necessarily against that. Again, I still think I'd rather have someone who is really experienced issuing me warnings than one who is local but has no experience. And right now, with turnover and that kind of thing, you have a lot of people with very little experience. There's a lot of new names at SPC. I have no idea. SPC has automatic credibility because they're SPC, but they have a lot of new people, and I have no idea what training they've had or what expertise they've had up at this point. We have no idea. But to have a team that's just focused on one thing, that is beneficial for SPC. They are focused on one big thing, and you build expertise very quickly. Those are so we definitely need a modernization, but it doesn't seem like that's likely since we're now in a cost cutting phase right now to ask to get more money, but it's needed.
And one hot button always on the show. Last lightning round issue, Pete. Before we go ahead and start wrapping up here, a high end weather app.
Yeah, so NOAA has been banned in the recent past from having an app, which I don't understand because FEMA has an app. But imagine if you could have an app that is color coded, location based, and it's color coded. So you have your warnings out, but where within the warning is the danger exist for the next 10 minutes where we want people to take shelter. So imagine having some type of an app that is, stoplight color coded, and that can utilize that color on your cell phone based on the grid where your location is. That, okay, you're under warning, but what action do you need to take? Right now, when you have a tornado warning, there's only one action that's communicated, and that's take cover now. But we could have a type of an app that is green if you're not in the path of the hazard, yellow if you're in the path, but it's still 30 minutes away, and red, it's time to take cover. And that wouldn't necessarily be all that difficult. I'm really kind of surprised there isn't such thing in the private sector, because they can make money out of that. They don't even have to charge for it. They could have an insurance company provide the funding for it. They would save money on their, that'd be a way for them to advertise not only to their existing clients, but they could advertise to new clients by providing that service. It seems like a win-win solution, but it hasn't been done. I even reached out to AccuWeather to see.
Yeah,
I've heard nothing at all. So, there's no motivation, I guess, to utilize these technologies to provide better threat information, not just more, but better threat information, and help people make better decisions.
Yeah, Corey Modis down in, well, I'm not going to say, he actually works for the Weather Services on his own, working on a nice app, which is in still beta testing now. I'm very impressed by it. We'll see.
Yep.
Hey, Pete, let's say you're Ken Graham. What would you say to the employees of the National Weather Service right now?
I'm sorry. First thing I would say, because it's out of his hands. He has no control of it, and that would not be a seat I'd want to be in right now.
Nope.
Nor an MIC position in a local office that could lose their new employees.
Well, he's also Pete being told he can't speak.
Well, yeah,
I've been told that by more than a few people, and I don't mind saying he's been told to shut up.
Yeah.
And
no, that's why it's very quiet.
You say something, you won't be in the position of saying it from there anymore, is what he's been told. So.
No, you have to toe the line. He either toes the line or he's silent.
Yeah.
So it's the lesser of two evils, I guess. I don't know.
So if you could say something encouraging, what would you say to the employees right now?
Well, it's going to come back. So I saw an interesting story about how politics sloshes like a bathtub. It's always going back and forth between liberal and conservative. And so in a few years, when people get upset, the economy goes down, people get upset, it's going to turn the other direction. And so whatever is done can be undone, just like, was done before the previous administration is now being undone. It'll be undone, and we'll probably go back to another normal again. It's just going to be some years of suffering, and that's really unfortunate. But that's one thing I've seen was that when Obama was in office, the Republicans grew in popularity, and vice versa. When Bush was in office, the Democrats grew. So there's going to be another wave, a blue wave the other direction, and that may actually help. In the end, for the Weather Service, it may all actually be a good thing, at least until AI takes over. Yeah. For them, it may actually lead us to become more efficient.
Yeah.
Because they refused to even talk about efficiency before, and now this might force it.
Well, one thing people, I think, have got to realize in all the clutter is to pull back from the wide view. This country is financially bankrupt. Sorry, but that's the way it is. Sorry if I've shocked anybody. We must cut the size of government. We've got to make it more efficient. And folks, if you want to blame someone tonight, it's easy to blame people, but I'm going to tell you who you need to blame. This is my editorial opinion, and it is not, I haven't cleared this through James. But folks, for the last 20 years plus, the people that represent us in the Senate and the House have failed to produce a balanced budget for 20 to 25 years. You want to look whose fault this is today? It is theirs. The blood is on the Senate and the House members. That's their responsibility. They have failed. We wouldn't be in this shape if it weren't for them. If we had a balanced budget, we would not be doing this today.
Well, what's the national debt, Troy? Where are we now?
Well, I don't know. It's some number. I can't even, I'd do good to, well, I can't say that. I was going to say something, get myself in trouble. I do good to count to 20, that old joke. I don't know. It's huge. I don't think any of us can even fathom what we're talking about, what it is.
But And I think it's both sides of the aisle. You know, and now everybody wants to point their fingers at the left wingers and the right wingers, and everybody's at fault here.
Yeah. Our Congress overall, it doesn't matter whether you have an R, an I, or a D, or whatever you happen to have behind your name, it's your fault.
I think there are a number on the right side who are in shock right now because they finally got what they wanted. They finally got all three branches. So they now could finally, they wanted to cut so much to balance the budget. That was what they were calling for over and over in the last few administrations. And they finally have it. And what is the new budget? Another $4 trillion in debt. I'm like, they'll just never be able to cut it. This is their big chance.
Yeah. That's more than James Spann makes in a year.
Yeah. So on that note, we got to take a break here. We're going to hear. We do not have a report from Tony this week. So we do have a This Week in Tornado History from Jen. We got Bruce we're going to bring in from Midland Radio. We will have picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
This week in tornado history, a long-track killer tornado moved 68.04 miles through portions of Alabama and Georgia on March the 3rd, 2019. Tragically, 23 people were killed in Lee County, Alabama. 97 were injured along the tornado's path. This was the second highest injury total from a tornado in 2019. The Dayton area twister of May 27th caused 166 injuries. A total of 40 tornadoes were confirmed on this day, and this twister was the strongest with a rating of EF4. The maximum winds were 170 miles per hour. For the National Weather Service in Birmingham survey in Lee County, a manufactured home was rolled and its contents were emptied nearby on the track's northern side. Complete destruction of a house with all debris tossed a short distance from the foundation. The frame of a car was bent around the remnant of a large tree whose upper portion was broken off and totaled 3 vehicles by severe impacts into the bases of 2 remaining tree stubs. East of this area, on the other side of a small lake, a well-anchored and constructed home was leveled with debris removed from the foundation and anchored bolt screws were remaining intact. 2 double-wides and a single-wide manufactured home was destroyed. This was the first violent tornado to hit Lee County, Alabama since March the 20th, 1875. Per Thomas Grisoulis, insignificant tornadoes on that day, an estimated F4 hit the Opelika area. 7 were killed and 20 were injured.
Hey. Jen is back in the house, which means we are going to do an email segment.
Thank you very much. I missed y'all past couple of Mondays. Weather got me the first week, and then sadly last week I had to go to a funeral. I lost my my bonus grandma. She was my step grandma. I knew her since I was 3 years old, and so I was there with my mom. And so it was a couple of hectic weeks, but now we're back, and I try to answer some of the emails that have come in. Thank you to everyone who's given us show suggestions, who have commented on some of the things that have been happening over the past few weeks, getting us some information as well. And so I do have a few that I want to kind of review. First of all, Brian Fowler wrote just now about AI and said the conversation should be focused on data. AI is simply software that requires data points in order to run simulations. If the National Weather Service is cut back, who collects the data? Is his question. Any thoughts? So just, I guess, making sure that we keep the data going here so we I don't know.
Notice Pete has run. He hung up
he
on
did
us.
run.
And
He's
ran.
like, I this conversation.
I had to go to the restroom.
He's done with it.
Yeah. I will say that, surface observations are contracted out now at airports. That's one example. So you can't contract people, electronics folks and so forth to cover a lot of it. So
that's good to know.
There's also private sector data sets now. One of the big things coming out are gap filling radars, which will, while they're not as good as Doppler radars themselves, they will at least fill the gap for like 4,000 to 5,000 foot coverage, which we really need for these weaker, low top type storms. So there are options, for the private sector to step up and contract with government for some of the observation type data, and that could include upper air.
Good, excellent. Question for Span. This is from our friend Jim Lewis. Question for James Spann, though I recognize there are many more pressing questions for the panel this week. He wrote this last week. I was watching some severe weather coverage he did back in December. My question is based on something he said. My question is, has he had the chance to try out that pocket fisherman that he mentioned someone got him? I didn't hear about this.
Hang on. I mean, here we go. All right. So,
Popeil
so what
pocket
happens?
fisherman.
So what happens? We often do overnight severe weather coverage where we are. We have a lot of overnight squall lines. And my standard joke is, what programs are we covering up this morning? It's probably a pocket fisherman commercial. And I said on the air, I would love to have a pocket fisherman. So Dennis Martin, one of our directors who was working that night, he found me a pocket fisherman. Where he came up with this thing, I don't know. But these are magical. So I keep it in the car. Whenever I need it, I can go fishing. So it's a good product. I'll fully endorse it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, man. Another question here. This is from a longtime listener, first time writer. This morning, James Spann said there were thankfully no fatalities in Alabama with the tornadoes over the weekend. This was written on February 17th. And this is, she's questioning, has a question about the flooding in Kentucky. This is Karen from Louisville. I realize that having wall-to-wall coverage for flash flood warnings is impossible. They last so long for one thing, but is there some way that the weather enterprise can emphasize the severity and danger of flooding? Maybe we've heard turn around, don't drown so long that we're desensitized to the message. I'd like to hear your thoughts about strengthening or improving the message about flooding. Any thoughts on that, especially from the TV folks? I can only talk 20 seconds. Sadly, I can't do much. I try to give the advice through on the radio, but.
And again, listen, it's easier in our world, at least my world, to do wall to wall because, quite frankly, not that many people watch linear television anymore. And, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, we've lost most of the audience in prime time. It used to be if you cut off a program on CBS or ABC or NBC at 9 o'clock, you would be torched, butchered. Now, hardly anybody watches these shows. The ratings are 1, 2s, where they used to be 21s and 22s. And so it's a lot easier to do that. There's a flash flood emergency. Yeah, man, I'm going wall to wall. It's an urgent, life-threatening situation. And even if you don't do it on the television side, just go on YouTube and Facebook, and that's where most people are anyway. So, I do think we need to be more aggressive with the upper end flash flood warnings, the ones that trigger WEA.
I'm going to end on this one. Hopefully this will make everybody smile. This is from our friend Tom Webb. Good morning, Jennifer. I saw this in a bad dad jokes column someplace. Somehow it seemed appropriate for James A. You heard about the guy who tried to catch fog? He missed. So thank you, Tom, for ending us on that note, which is just so great. Thank you for your emails, everybody. We appreciate you so much. We are gearing up for our 1000th show. We're so excited we've got some special things planned. I think you all are going to really enjoy it. I'm excited to meet so many of the panelists for the first time in person. And we're excited just to present this show and look back and share that with you. So thank you to everyone who has commented on how excited you are about it and given us the clips and your ideas and your favorite guests and shows. And it's just been great to get all the feedback. We have really the best listeners, I think, in the world, and we appreciate you. So please send us your emails at email@weatherbrains.com. Bill?
Yeah, and many thanks to the folks at Barron Services who are going to have us all there. And beyond that, they're going to feed us an incredible St. Patrick's Day buffet, Troy. So bangers and mash and show 1000. That's not a bad combination. Although it could make
what is that? I mean,
you don't know what bangers and mash is?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Oh my!
I had I had that surgically removed when I was in 5th grade.
Yeah, probably that night you had the bad night on WeatherBrains, James. That was probably they were removing the bangers and mash. Oh, it's fabulous mashed potatoes and sausages, man. You're gonna love it.
I can live with that.
Now,
bangers. That's got to be a show title. Bangers and mash.
Yeah, there you go. Now I see a frightening report in western Kansas near Garden City of a wildfire. Active wildfire north of Deerfield, northwest of Garden City. And with those surface winds, that is not
Nope.
good.
Nope.
So, and you were saying, James, you see some echoes beginning to bubble up out there also.
Yeah, running the satellite, and we're starting on that impulse to see convection trying to form. So it starts. There's already, as Troy popped in chat a little earlier, there was a mesoscale discussion with a 95% probability of tornado watch on the way.
Right.
Too
Yeah, I
soon.
think
Too
they're
soon.
gonna be notifying some hotels in southern Oklahoma here shortly. So
I'm telling y'all, folks, I'm looking at just storm reports from Amarillo in the last hour, and look at these surface winds. Non-thunderstorm wind gust to 63, non-thunderstorm wind gust to 60. These are all in that northwest half of the panhandle.
yeah.
I'm not, tomorrow is going to be a bad day with fires. So
Let's don't do it. But this time every week we're joined by our friend Bruce Jones during the winter, late winter and spring. And Bruce, we were talking earlier about threats in motion and weather radio, and I know you and Kevin Laws have done a lot of talking about this. So discuss with us, kind of what the future holds for weather radio, and is this something that's in motion? Pun not intended, James A. For weather radio as we move toward this new warning paradigm.
No, I have discussed this. We have discussed it, we being Midland Radio. We've discussed it with Ken and Michelle Manelli. And I saw Greg Stumpf at the National Storm Chaser Summit a couple of weekends ago and discussed it with him. I think it's a very good idea, and it's very doable on NOAA Weather Radio if we give each tornado warning a kind of an identifier code like we do on a thunderstorm cell on radar. Each thunderstorm cell has a kind of an identifier to it, tagged to it. If you were to do the same thing with a tornado warning, then my weather radio would go off with the deedle 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 alert tone the first time it receives information on that tornado warning. But the subsequent updates on the location and the motion of that tornado warning would not trigger that same alert tone, but it would allow you to light up different lights on the radio. So you could have indicator lights going less than 10% chance, up to 50% chance, up to 75% chance, up to 90% chance. And those indicators could follow the lifespan of that tornado warning. So it's easily doable. And in fact, I've got a meeting coming up later this month in Washington, D.C. to discuss such things.
And Bruce, that would, as you and I have talked on the phone in the last week, that would be weather radios that have a GPS in them, correct?
Right. Yeah. A GPS chip nowadays costs about $1.25. I mean, these are things that, 15 years ago were probably $40, but they're a little more than $1 now. So there's a couple of ways that, you could do something like that. But put a GPS chip inside the radio so it knows its exact location and knows where within the polygon it is right now. And then you can move that tornado threat with the threats in motion, and the radio will keep track of the different motions and how much closer the tornado is coming to your location. So this is all doable, and it's all part of what I think will be the future of warning people via radio wave, and that's still very important. Pete mentioned something about doing warnings by Starlink. One of the issues with getting warnings off of any kind of a satellite transmission is you have the rain fade and you have interference from a 50,000 foot tall thunderstorm. It makes it very difficult to do that. But radio waves, especially on the FM frequencies, and NOAA Weather Radio is a FM, VHF FM frequency, they're not affected by lightning. They're not affected by static in the atmosphere. So, this frequency was chosen for that reason. If you want to hear static, turn on AM. I used to, people tell me, what was it like to chase back in the 80s? I said, well, in the 80s, you had a weather radio and a Rand McNally Atlas and you had a lightning detector. And they go, "What kind of lightning detector?" I said, "It's called AM radio."
AM radio. Yeah.
You had the AM on, and when you saw a couple of potent thunderstorms out on the horizon, and you started to hear all that static popping on the radio, you knew one of them was getting electrified.
Yeah.
And just wait for the warning to come out and head that direction. So anyway.
So Bruce, weather radio is still a very important part of our arsenal in alerting folks, especially these middle of the night systems like this one. It's going to roll into Duncan, Oklahoma tonight around 2:30, Ardmore around 4. The weather services.
I'm in Durant.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm in Durant, Oklahoma, and James, take a look at the and it's got something rolling in here real bad around 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
I've got a room on the downwind side, so my window's actually facing east.
So are you in the casino there, Bruce? You're gonna head down to the floor here shortly, just while away the hours till the storms get there.
Yeah, this is the world's 6th largest casino, is the Choctaw Casino in Durant, Oklahoma.
I know that area well, not from the casino, because there was no casino when I was going there, but now they have a radar too, Bruce, in that area.
Yep. Yeah, they put it on the water tower right up north of the casino, about
That's
1 mile north.
Gap-filling radars that Pete was talking about. But Bruce, you got a special offer for WeatherBrains listeners that allow them to take advantage of special pricing for any of your equipment at Midland.
Yeah, and this week it's Severe Weather Awareness Week in 10 states. Let me see if I can name them off. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, and I may have missed one in there, but a lot of states this week are having Severe Weather Awareness Week. So this is the time to get serious about your severe weather safety plan for your family. If you go to midlandusa.com, there's a promo code that you can use at midlandusa.com, and it'll get you 25% off of a life-saving NOAA weather radio. The promo code is SPAN25. That's SPANN25. SPANN25. SPAN25 gets you 25% off any weather radio product at midlandusa.com. This is the time of year when we're just starting to get into tornado season. As Troy said, it is going to be an active day tonight and especially tomorrow. This is the time of year when you need to take it upon yourself to make sure that your family, your business, your school is protected with every mode of warning available. Multiple redundant ways of getting these warnings is what saves lives. And make sure a NOAA weather radio is part of that plan. 25% off when you use the promo code SPAN25 at midlandusa.com.
Bruce, I have a quick question for you. With everything happening tomorrow, and especially on the southwest side of this system, NOAA weather radio can be triggered for fire weather alerts as well, right?
Absolutely. Okay. The big Starbuck, I'm sorry, it doesn't have an S on the end. The Starbuck fire burned about 500,000 acres in northern Oklahoma and Kansas back about 10 years ago. And National Weather Service Dodge City saved a lot of lives by putting out wildfire warnings and evacuation immediate. I'm not sure if we had any human loss of life in the state of Kansas on that fire, but it burned 500,000 acres of land. Yeah. So these wildfire warnings do work via NOAA weather radio, especially when the phone lines get burned through and the cell phone towers catch fire.
But it's the absolute baseline. And again, you can be a disciple for us and tell your friends and your neighbors and your relatives that they need it in their home and their business. Every home and business needs one. And so again, thanks for you supporting, those of you that are listeners, supporting weather radio, because we've got to get more weather radios in homes and businesses. So, all right, we've got to do picks of the week here. We're had a great show tonight, but this is where we go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something weather-related that is interesting. And my pick of the week, it is one of the local television stations in Louisville did a story on our friend John Gordon, who retired from federal service. John was the meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service in Louisville, and goodness, his passion for people and the science is unmatched. And what a career he's had. So again, that'll be my pick of the week. But let's go over to James Adelot before the storms get too busy. James, give us a good pick of the week.
Hey, we already had pick of the week in deep study earlier in WeatherBrains. It's a forecast photograph and sounding from somewhere south central Oklahoma. I think I punched somewhere around Duncan, but just kind of a quick tour of the 30-second tour of what parameters you could look at real quick.
Awesome. All right, good deal. And again, we'll put the links up on weatherbrains.com. Troy, give us your pick of the week.
Pick of the week. I don't have a link to go with this, but I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to thank Victor Murphy. Victor is the climate focal point at Southern Region headquarters, good friend, and he today noticed and sent a note out in regard to Roswell, New Mexico. This is a sign of what is to come, folks. If you didn't see this, Roswell, New Mexico today, 1 mile and blowing dust under a clear sky and winds of 67 knots in Roswell today. That's the fourth highest wind recorded in the period of record for that climate site since 1942. And thank you, Victor Murphy. I just don't have a link for everyone on that. But again, Roswell, New Mexico today, I think that is a sign of what trouble we have coming the next couple of days.
Yeah, had trouble indeed. All right, Jen, give us a good pick of the week.
So mine is actually a John Gordon pick as well. It's his final forecast discussion that he produced. It's really a very good read, and it made me teary-eyed. But you just got to read it. You know, you have to go back and just see, starting in 1993, and all the changes that he's seen and why he got into weather. He put all this in his forecast discussion. It's really, really classic. So you need to read it.
It was good. It's not your standard AFD. You need to read that one. Okay, Kim, give us a marvelous pick of the week.
Well, since we mentioned different opportunities to get various kinds of severe weather training as we're getting into severe weather season, if you want a deep dive, I'm linking to Ariel Cohen's Severe Thunderstorm Forecasting video lecture series that he developed when he was at SPC.
And those are excellent. Again, the links will be up on weatherbrains.com in the show notes. Okay, Bruce, give us your pick of the week for this week.
Well, I wish I was at home because I have this book at home. It's called But Wait, There's More. It's a history of infomercials.
Yes.
Get the pocket fisherman. Get out the pocket fisherman.
This thing is outstanding.
The book is out
that's
of print.
Yes, that's what we cut off during the early morning hours typically. And
look at that.
I always talk about Ginsu knives, pocket fisherman, the slicer, dicer, Ron Popeil, all that stuff. But so that's what a great pick. Wow. Okay, Pete, we have stalled long enough, and we know you've got something good for us. So go.
Well, thank you for giving me time to think about it. So, I don't know how much what this all encompasses, but for me, if you don't know about the Europeans' AI guidance, you soon will. It is beyond comprehension how well that thing has done, like particularly in tropical and some of the hurricanes we had last season. And I think we're going to see more and more shift to AI forecasting weather for us and possibly doing it better. It's going to be interesting. Computers are so much faster today than they were 10, 20 years ago. It's almost like the sky's the limit as to what the models are going to be able to produce.
Pete, make sure you mention your website again too. I know James will ask you to do that, but make sure you.
Let's plug it now. What
I want to plug is my Twitter page, which is My Monster Storms. If you want to see mesoanalysis in action, like in these events, I'm going to be on there probably tomorrow morning through the afternoon. You can kind of see how, and it'll have images as well of what I'm looking at, how to predict, not just look for signatures, but utilizing environment and storm structure to predict hazards. So you can take a look at that.
And I think it's important to kind of stress what you said earlier, Pete. You'd really to use radar. You don't have to be a meteorologist. You can learn these techniques, and it can be. I mean, everybody needs some basic idea of how to use radar. And I think that's a good skill set. I tell that to kids all the time. You can learn this stuff, and it's a practical, marvelous way of learning more about radar, what it can do, what it cannot do, and how it can help you when there's tornadoes or other dangerous weather around here.
Well,
So,
James, and that's especially true when you've got Radar Scope. When anyone can go out and buy that, it's a great program, or any of the radar app programs, but I like Radar Scope. But you're exactly right.
And people do. I mean, if you look at the Weather Channel's app, over 100 million downloads. Now, by whom and how much they're trained to understand the data, I don't know. But people are accessing that information on their smartphones.
Yep.
And there could be a day where you're going to be looking at Radar Scope on your phone, and you're not going to have Troy, or you're not going to have James Adelot, or you're not going to have a meteorologist to help you to see what you're seeing here. And having some basic skill set, it's a good thing. All right, Bill Murray, go. What's your pick?
Yeah, James, I'm going to take the foghorn just because nobody else took the foghorn here. And
yeah, Bill, I love it.
I always like to hear the foghorn. But next week, our old friend Rich Thomas is going to join us, James. It's been 19 years, and we should have heard from Rich Thomas by now. So we're going to hear from him next week. And then in 2 weeks from tonight, we will all be in Huntsville. 2 weeks. And, of course, there will be severe weather and catastrophic flash flooding and wildfires, and no telling what else will be happening all over Alabama that night. So, it'll go down catastrophically.
Y'all realize we'll probably be never invited back to Alabama after this.
Never. That'll be the end of it. And then the week after we get back from that, Carly Ann is going to join us. We tried to have her on several months ago. She's going to join us just from listener popular demand. And then Tim Heller, our old friend, will join us on April 14th. And I've got a lot of other dates to fill in there through end of March into April and on and beyond. But many thanks to Jen for what she's done to arrange the show 2 weeks from tonight, and so much thanks to our loyal listeners. And I can't say enough about our friends at Barron for helping us pull this off.
Indeed, it's going to be something special. So we're 2 weeks away from show 1000 live in Huntsville, Alabama at Barron Weather. But we've got to go here. It's been a great show. If you are new, we typically produce the show Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. You can watch it live. It is being produced on the WeatherBrains YouTube channel, youtube.com/WeatherBrains. But we know that most of you listen to the produced audio podcast. However you watch, listen, whatever, thank you. And if you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless.
Thanks, looking Pete. To the west about 6:30 in the morning. Bruce Jones is looking rough out there.
Yeah, look at the I know I am a little concerned about it.
That updraft helicity
coming right over Durant.
2 or 3 runs in a row there.
I will tell y'all, lightning's really started firing from Gage northward now. I don't know if y'all had seen that, but